Most brands think they sell luxury. Very few actually create desire. This is the difference. The Future of Luxury podcast with Dr. Daniel Langer. Welcome to the Future of Luxury podcast. I'm Daniel Langer, I'm the CEO of Equite, and my team and I advise some of the most iconic luxury brands in the world across all different categories. I'm also a professor and teach luxury strategy at Pepperdine University and at other schools like NYU. Today, I want to take you inside conversations that I've been having in boardrooms for the last couple of months. And I want to start with some of the questions I hear most often. We can even say they're the wrong ones, but maybe more precisely, they are actually really important questions, but they're hiding the question that maybe matters most. So the questions I hear very often is, will China come back? Will pricing power hold? How quickly will the aspirational luxury client return? Every leadership team that I'm meeting is working through some version of this list. And the industry has spent the last years treating the current situation as a demand problem. But my take is that demand will normalize. It always does. Markets somewhat find their footing. However, what waits underneath is much harder to fix. My analysis is that it will define the next decade of this industry, and it is the subject of this episode. Luxury brands are losing their differentiation. I'll repeat that one more time. Luxury brands are losing their differentiation. Let me tell you what I mean and why I believe that this is the defining threat, and most importantly, what to do about it. Because as always on this podcast, I do not want to leave you with a description of a problem. I want to leave you with something that you can act on tomorrow morning. So let's start with the first part, the Sea of Sameness. Here is an exercise that I do regularly, and I would encourage you to do that exercise too. Take the campaigns of some of the leading luxury brands, cover the logos, and now try to identify each brand. Most people honestly cannot. And I've done this exercise also in a lot of my master classes with, in the meantime, thousands of participants and practically never across different categories. And we've done this with practically all categories. People can attribute the product to the right brand. And that indicates already that there is a problem in the categories and in the differentiation. When I run this exercise in workshops, the room usually goes quiet. And then someone laughs, a little uncomfortable, because everyone realizes that the same thing is happening not only in other categories, but also in their own category. And without the logos, the campaigns are interchangeable. Beautiful, absolutely. Expensive to produce, there's no question. However, they are interchangeable. And the same pattern shows up when you walk through luxury districts of any major capital. I do this constantly when I travel, whether I'm in Paris, in Tokyo, in New York, in Singapore, wherever my travel takes me. And I do this as a client because this is the only perspective that matters. And so every time I travel, I visit at least 10, 15 stores of different brands. And what I find all the time is that the choreography repeats. Similar materials, similar lighting, similar greetings, similar cadence of the service. And at the end also, and this is the most problematic thing, it's a similar feeling, which is to say, in many cases, there is no distinct feeling at all. And the language, read the website of, let's say, take 10 different luxury brands and count how often you encounter the same vocabulary. Exceptional craftsmanship, heritage, timeless design, savoir-faire. These words are not wrong, but they have been repeated so often, so many times, for so many brands, that they stop carrying meaning. When every brand claims excellence, then excellence becomes something like a wallpaper, a commodity. Now, none of this happened because luxury executives are careless. It's the opposite. It happens because everyone is executing well against the same playbook. Every house talks about craftsmanship and heritage. Everyone is building communities and inviting top customers to increasingly elaborate private events. Hotels are moving into residences, fashion brands into hospitality, opening cafes and so on. Automotive brands into lifestyle. Practically everyone wants to create a kind of cultural universe. And individually, many of these initiatives make sense. I have personally advised on several of them, and some are really excellent. However, collectively, when you zoom out and you see the entire category is doing the same thing, they're creating then consequently a sea of sameness. And this is the phrase that I keep coming back and back all the time: the sea of sameness. And a client swimming in that sea has no reason to pay a premium. Let me tell you about two words that worry me more than almost anything else I hear in meetings. And these words are best practice. It sounds reassuring, doesn't it? It suggests rigor. It suggests benchmarking. It suggests reduced risk, professional management. And I understand the appeal. When you are responsible for $1 billion brand, then following a best practice feels like a defensible position. It makes you feel, or it makes brands feel, sometimes more secure. But think about what the phrase actually means, though. It means doing what everyone else has already done. When every brand studies the same market environment, hires from the same talent pools, then convergence stops being just a risk. It becomes a certainty. You have institutionalized imitation, and it's then often called strategies. So best practices, don't get me wrong, they can improve execution, but desire comes from somewhere else entirely. And this distinction sits at the heart of what luxury actually is. And for those of you who have listened to the previous episodes, you know my definition of luxury. And to me, this is the ability to create extreme value. A brand has to give clients a reason to desire it far beyond the functional characteristics of the products and services. A watch tells time, but a $50 watch tells it just as accurately as a $50,000 watch, and sometimes maybe even more accurately. So the entire justification for the price difference lives in what the brand makes the client feels, what it allows them to express, and what it lets them become. The greater the price premium, the more powerful and precise the reason needs to be. And this also means that the storytelling has to be dramatically better. If you want to charge, twice as much as your closest competitors, you need to be much, much higher, at least twice as high in perceived value. And to achieve this, you have to do something that is close to magic. And magic, by definition, cannot be a best practice. The moment everyone does the same thing, then it stops working. And in one of the previous episodes, I talked about, one of the most expensive misconceptions in luxury, the confusion of pricing power with brand power. If you have not listened to that episode, I really recommend you to do so. Because today's topic is on the other side of the same coin. Pricing power is a result. It follows from differentiation, from the value a brand creates in the mind and the heart of the client. When differentiation erodes, clients start comparing. And on a pure comparison standpoint, luxury always loses because there's always a functional alternative that is there at a fraction of the cost. So Let's move from here to another very, very important part, and this is the experience trap. Now, the industry has recognized that something is off. And the default response, almost everyone has been doing is to add experience. Branded cafes, private diners have become almost a standard. So have residencies, wellness concepts, and invitation only events. I was recently at an industry gathering where 4 different executives from several different categories described their experience strategies to me. And each presentation was polished. Each one could have been delivered by any of the other 3. And that's the problem. Let me be very clear about my position here, because it's easy to misunderstand. Experiences can be extraordinarily powerful. Some of the most successful work my team and I have been doing is to improve to transform, I should say, the client experience. However, the trap is elsewhere. Adding an experience doesn't automatically create differentiation. A brand cafe that generates Instagram traffic while having little connection to the emotional core of the brand, it creates visibility, but visibility is cheap. And a private dinner that resembles dozens of other private dinners, doesn't really reward a client because it actually wastes their time and it's not going to deepen desire. They enjoyed the evening, hopefully, but they will also enjoy the evening that the next brand is offering them.
I'm Dr. Daniel Langer. I advise some of the most iconic luxury brands in the world, and I'm also the executive professor of luxury strategy at Pepperdine University, and I teach luxury at NYU. The luxury industry is changing faster than ever before. Dramatically shifting consumer expectations, the rise of Gen Z and AI are redefining what luxury means today. And this means companies must operate in a radically different way. This moment demands action. And this is why we created Equity Intelligence. It redefines luxury training for top management, marketing, sales teams, and client-centric roles. It's an innovative digital learning solution that equips your teams with the strategic capabilities needed for the next era of luxury. Our platform delivers real-world insights and tools your teams can apply immediately. The world's leading brands trust us to prepare their teams for this transformation, and this is your moment to future-proof your organization.
So the strategic question is far more demanding than what should the next experience look like. We have to really define, how the client feels with that specific brand in a way that they cannot feel with any other brand in the world. This is the real question. And I often ask leadership teams, how to approach that. And even, one of the most interesting findings is when I ask them, what is the different feeling that, customers should take away from their brand? It's actually a surprisingly difficult question or difficult answer, really, to articulate. And it's not that, the people that are leading a lot of the brands are stupid. They are brilliant. They have decades of experience in many cases. They have a deep love for their own brand. And when I ask, what emotional territory does the brand own? Uniquely, precisely, it's hard for many to really put this in words. And this is not an exception. We've seen this over and over again, that this is actually rather the norm. And it is a warning, because if the senior leadership of a brand cannot define with extreme precision what the brand actually owns emotionally, then actually the teams of their brands will not be able to commit or transmit that. And then, of course, also the clients will not feel that. They will simply feel something or they do not. But increasingly across the industry, and we can see this also in our mystery shopping exercises, customers do not. In our research at Equite, we put numbers on this. And in the work behind the Equite Luxury Report 2026 to 2030, which we titled The Cost of Waiting, roughly 90% of luxury clients told us that experiences today are comparable across brands. I repeat, 90%. Think about what that number means for a category whose entire economic model depends on incomparability. Why technology is making this urgent right now? There's a reason I believe this topic cannot wait, and it has to do with speed. We are entering an era of dramatic acceleration and of the need of much, much better executions. Campaigns that took months can be developed today in weeks. Competitive intelligence that took, very deep research can be done now in an afternoon. Client data that sat unused in systems can now be activated at a pace that was remarkable even 3 years ago. The tools available to luxury brands today have never been more powerful. And here's the paradox. When everyone can optimize faster, optimization itself stops being a competitive advantage. Speed is becoming a commodity. If you don't have it, you're out of the market. But if you have it, your competitors have it too. Just like quality became a commodity. What technology cannot do is to compensate for an unclear identity. This is the point I want you to remember from this episode. So let me put this as simply as I can. Speed amplifies whatever already exists. A sharply defined brand becomes dramatically more powerful when it can execute faster, because every touch point expresses the same distinct idea, more often with more precision. A generic brand, on the other hand, produces a generic output at a far greater scale. It becomes more efficient at being forgettable. Remember that. A generic brand becomes more efficient at being forgettable, which means the sequence matters enormously. Differentiation has to come before acceleration. Brands that accelerate first and clarify later are spending enormous sums to arrive at the sameness faster than their competitors. So let's look into the battle for meaning, because this is so closely connected. So where does this go? Let me give you my prediction, and it is one that I hold with really, really very strong conviction. For the defining luxury battle of the next decade, it will be fought over meaning. The strongest brands already understand that the competitive set is much larger than just their product category. For example, a handbag competes for cultural relevance. A hotel competes for a place in someone's memory. In every case, and this is the shift, the client is deciding what the brand allows them to feel and to become. The product is the vehicle, it's the proxy. Meaning is what they really pay for. This changes the role of brand strategy at the deepest level. Heritage becomes less defensible because younger clients have very little reason to care about the history unless that history creates relevance for their lives today. This is what so many brands are forgetting. A founding date from somewhere in the past is a fact. It becomes an asset only when the brand can translate it into something that a 25-year-old, a 30-year-old, 40-year-old today, whether they live in Shanghai, in Los Angeles, in Dubai, in Tokyo, it has to evoke a feeling in their own life right now. Craftsmanship is essential, don't get me wrong. However, flawless execution has become the entry ticket. No one pays a premium today for an entry ticket. Experience matters when they express something very distinctive, a distinctive emotional idea, and only then. The winning brands will answer one question with absolute clarity. Why should someone desire us when hundreds of other brands, other exceptional products, and beautiful experiences exist around us? If your answer relies on words that appear on your competitor's website, you do not have really an answer.
I'm Dr. Daniel Langer, and after advising many of the world's most iconic luxury brands and teaching both at Pepperdine and NYU, I've seen how quickly the luxury industry is evolving. And the reality is, most universities simply can't keep up. Today's students want more than theory. You want industry-relevant skills and real frameworks. You want a clear path into fast-growing fields like luxury fashion, luxury beauty, luxury hospitality, and other luxury sectors. That's why we created something special, Equity Intelligence Academia. It's a rigorous, industry-backed luxury education ecosystem. It lets you add a globally recognized luxury certificate directly to your MBA or undergraduate degree. You'll get professionally produced video lessons, real case studies, practical toolkits, assessments, and a certificate recognized in the luxury industry. If you're ready to fast-track your career development, stand out in a competitive job market, this is your moment. Enroll in Equity Intelligence today and elevate your degree and your future.
So now we have seen significant analysis, but let's go now to the part that I've been promising you, the part of what to do now. So, in times when the market was growing disproportionately, then the demand that was there already was helping both the brands that are very well positioned and the brands that have had a lot of issues. Now, with customers scrutinizing brands much more, this whole game is changing. And the brands that have structural deficits now really, really feel it. So, what would I recommend you doing? The first is do a rigorous brand audit. And why does it have to be rigorous? Because you don't want to sugarcoat anything. It's not going to help you if someone in your team says everything is good and there's just this issue and this issue or that issue. I can tell you also in my advisory work, I've been called so often into brands that first, looked internally and said everything is kind of okay, and then they didn't do the homework that they needed to do, and then years later they pay a kind of really, really steep price for it. So when you do a brand audit, do it really rigorously. When we do brand audits for our clients, I always like to call it, we give them the tough love, because it's not helping to conceal certain things or so. We always benchmark with competition. We benchmark with what are the client's expectations, not just today, but also our research of what we believe will be the client's expectations in the future. And then we also look into everything from search to AI, what is said about the brands, because these are also more and more decision factors. And then we put all of this together, triangulate, and then we basically see where is the brand performing on par, below, and above. And I can tell you that in very, very few cases, you can find a profile where one brand really checks all the boxes. So do this regularly and do this rigorously. I would, in today's world, I would say you have to do a thorough brand audit at least once a year. And probably with the increased speed that we have been discussing, probably in the future, we have to do this more often than not. So once the brand audit is done, then the second part is really define the meaning behind the brand. And this is an exercise that is not done in a week or two. When we do this for our clients, I can tell you it takes about, in best case, about 6 weeks, but very often it takes much longer. It can be 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, and so on. Because the meaning, or often I refer to this also as the brand story, this is the most fundamental thing of the brand. And for the most fundamental thing, this is something that you should never rush, but it needs time, it needs incredible expertise to do this right. And why do you need that? Because you want to be different than everyone else. And to be different than anyone else, the first thing is we have to define what the brand really stands for. And this is not to define its role in the category. It is to define its role in the life of the client. It is to define, the value creation system, the way how I like to call it. And remember, luxury is extreme value creation. So we have to define the system that enables a brand to deliver on that value. And then once this is done, and only then you should move to the third step and define the client experience. And here, importantly, this experience has to unlock the meaning that you defined before. So it cannot just follow the playbook of every other brand, because then again, we are in the area of best practices. The perfect customer experience has to look into, what is the brand standing for, and then bringing that to life and making it tangible so that the customer actually receives that experience when they interact with the brand. So this concludes our podcast episode of today. I hope that you found it really insightful. And if you do, then I would ask you to share this episode with friends, with colleagues that will find this helpful. This always helps. Also follow me on Instagram. Follow me on my Substack, daniellenge.substack.com. And then we also have a Substack of Equity Intelligence, our on-demand learning platform. It's called equityintelligence.substack.com. And there you get a lot of behind the scenes from all the different episodes, but also a lot of hints on what to do with the content that you listen to in the episode. Look at the show notes. There I also always provide a lot of additional information that you will find extremely useful. And with this, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and see you soon.
If this changed how you think, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Bookmark this show, new episodes regularly, The Future of Luxury with Dr. Daniel Lenge.